when you start trying to recognize what you have and then applying it to your day-to-day job, well, who do I explain this diagnosis to? Growing up the way we did, we didn't really talk about those things. It was a little bit, say, embarrassing.
Welcome to the Invisible Encourage Show, a production of the Invisible Disabilities Association. Join us as we explore the stories and topics shaping the lives of those with invisible disabilities and all who support them. Let's get started.
Hello everyone, Jess Steinberg here with the Invisible Disabilities Association with another episode of our Invisible Encourage podcast. And super excited today because I've got the author of Finn the Forgetful Fish. John Cusimano is here. And John, how are you? It's good to see you.
Good. Hi. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, excited to hear about Finn and some of those things. But really, before we get there, what I really like to hear more about you. What would you want somebody to understand about your story that they wouldn't simply know by just looking at you?
I think it's I was diagnosed with ADHD as an adult. It was very interesting because, growing up without knowing that, and then now recognizing that as an adult, it was like this aha moment right off the bat. And what was very interesting about it was not necessarily the diagnosis, but really, all the other stuff, all the other things that were coming into play, learning about the diagnosis, learning about the things that I would need to do moving forward. And really that's kind of like the beginning of all of this is really that understanding, that discovery, and kind of coming from there.
Well, there's probably a lot of things that you were able to look back in school and stuff and go,
absolutely.
Oh, no wonder, right?
Absolutely.
Well, when did you actually first realize that invisible didn't mean insignificant?
Really, that was a little bit later after the diagnosis. It's when you start trying to recognize what you have and then applying it to your day-to-day job. Well, who do I explain this diagnosis to? Growing up the way we did, we didn't really talk about those things. And, it was invisible. And it was a little bit, say, embarrassing. And really that's where it took me a while to really kind of come to that conclusion that this is a positive, this is a trait. Not a lot of people have this, from a neurodiversity sort of perspective. And really, it's like, wow, how did I get to be so lucky?
Yeah, it's interesting. I talk with a lot of people about how sometimes this invisible disability is actually a gift. I mean, mine is, I have severe dyslexia. And so people just immediately kind of plop you in this group, and same thing with school.
Yeah.
You don't realize what's going to happen. Well, and I guess that kind of leads to the next question of if you could go back, what do you think? What would you like teachers, employers, friends, even family members, like how would you want them to better understood or understand who you were earlier in life?
I think if anything, it would be, recognizing the talents that come with it, and being able to understand where, where that skill set lies. It really is about communication. It really is about education, but education from a perspective of this is what I see. This is how I approach, an issue or topic. This is how I learn. And really kind of coming, circling around saying, okay, well, let's, as a group, let's use that additional information for education, to understand why you feel this way. I mean, one of the subs of mine is obviously depression. It's a very common sub with ADHD. And so, having to deal with that piece of it and recognizing this is systemic, or this is a sub of that other diagnosis. So yeah,
Yeah.
education.
Yeah, and I would agree. I mean, there's we say many times, well, but you look good, right? Like that's some excuse
Right,
of
right.
of washing over this thing that actually affects you in one way or another. And again, may not be necessarily always negative, but sometimes the reaction is negative, right? So,
Hmm.
well, so let's talk about Finn the forgetful fish. Just where did Finn come from? I mean, was there a particular experience that made you think I need to tell this story through a children's character?
It's from my professional career actually. I coming in with 20 plus years. I'm an IT auditor by trade, and having to explain those types of things. It was interesting to me to see that you have executive leadership not understand some fundamental concepts with audit. That easily translate, and that's where the children's book sort of methodology came into play. And then I started thinking, it's like, wow, it's not just audit. It's about this, it's about ADHD. It's about sort of other things that, impact my life on a day-to-day basis. And really it was me sitting down, capturing these thoughts. I enjoyed writing. It was one of my passions throughout school. It helped me process information pretty regularly. And Finn came out of that, really. And that was the fun part, is getting it down on paper. And then taking it to the next step is not a very good drawer. And so coming in and trying to figure out a way to get this illustrated. And that's where the internship that I've put together with my publishing company, and working with different students, up and coming students, giving them an opportunity to not only you know draw and and show their talents, writing scripts for other students who enjoy creative writing, but then taking that experience in a professional setting and developing, some structure around that dialogue. Rose, who was the illustrator for Finn, and she was amazing. And what was nice about it is she read the story. She had said, "I can personally relate to this story. I'm excited. Yes, I want to use my talents and skills to bring this story to image into paper." And it was that collaboration that was just extremely rewarding. And now to have universities like the University of Colorado, adopting this internship opportunity, and trying to formalize this, it's just a blessing on many, many levels. So
Yeah, that's so cool to hear about it. I mean, I was a university professor for a long time with interacting with digital media kids and the creatives, right? Which are
yeah,
actually put in their own category. But more often than not, it's just their learning style, right? It's very different.
right.
The way they engage and the way they interact and stuff. So what a great opportunity that you're providing in allowing those kinds of students that have this creative outlet that are sometimes pushed into a corner or not fully understood to be able to play it out in the context of what you're doing. That's so awesome.
Yeah, it really is a great opportunity. It was something that, not only helps the students express themselves, but here it is in a practical way of being able to say, wow, I have a published book. I'm here to, I'm able to show my talents. I'm able to build a portfolio. Working with University of Colorado, I could get credit for this, those types of things. And,
Yeah, it's
you know,
launching jobs for them, right? I mean, that
it is. It really
digital
is.
portfolio is a huge thing of giving them things that they can show off to say, hey, look, I did this thing, and oh, it's a real book. It's not just some fake assignment, right?
Right, right. It really is. The internship is the embodiment of showing up with humility, with curiosity, with education, direction. listening is just as important as contributing. And, and that kind of goes back to what I see as, the great work that you guys are doing too. So I'm glad, we're connecting, and, because the message in the mission statement is the same. And
Yeah,
that's
that's
really
awesome.
awesome.
Well, I know that in your book, Finn struggles with forgetfulness and self-doubt. And just out of curiosity, how much of Finn is John?
I don't remember. So it's a lot. It's a lot. And again, it was, the method behind it is about the communication, about getting what I was feeling down on paper, and really kind of coming, and sharing that information. One of the things that I see about children's book as a medium is, the general premise of a children's book is around distilling complex information into digestible, bits and pieces. And, you know, I had to do that within my life. I'm a big fan of keep it simple, and that's really kind of what it is. If there's a child who, is sympathetic, or, hey, that's me, just like with my diagnosis, wow, oh, wow, this opens up the door for so many things. And on top of it, too, it isn't just for the kid, it's for the parent, too. The goal is really around, you know, providing the parent that understanding of what the child is feeling, and to be able to share that within a family setting, that's what stories are all about. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really awesome. And well, and there's a big difference between telling a child there's something wrong with you and saying your
Absolutely.
brain might work differently, right? So, I mean,
Absolutely.
how would you see that the book helps children understand that distinction?
I think it's, you know I'm very empathetic with Finn. Finn is, like you said, is a lot like me. I do forget, but having friends, to help with that, having friends understand, yeah, they may not understand the full nuances of it, but being there and being present and being, you know, building that friendship. That's what friendship is really about. Is really kind of that purpose. And again, I just nothing but excited about the book. I'm excited about the characters there. And if it helps a kid understand about themselves, if it helps a parent understand about their kid, bonus, you know?
Yeah, for sure. No, that's awesome. I mean, one of the challenges, and I mentioned it earlier, of people that live with invisible disabilities is really that somebody says, "But you look fine," right?
Right.
What do you think that statement misses?
Well, I mean, to go back to the book, Finn is a fish. Finn looks fine. He's a fish, and when you look at his struggles in there, it's like, it's this recognition of, like, I breathe as a fish, I swim as a fish, but something that is fundamentally a part of being a fish not being there. Um, that's the essence, and that's really kind of what I see as a topic of, a big topic of invisible disabilities, is the fact that, it isn't just about not, saying, well, John's fine, John looks fine, but it it creates a new level of empathy. It creates a new level of wanting to bond with that fish, bond with John as a part of friendship, as a part of just being there for the other one. I may not understand your issues, but you know what? I'm here for you. And that's the beauty of, this book. That's the beauty of what I'm trying to convey as a part of a message of, bringing to light, some of the ways of addressing invisible disabilities, you know, providing the space to allow people to, say, hey, you know what? I think differently in this way, or, you know, it, anxiety, I'm, really triggered by this. No worries. That's why we're here for you as a friend.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It got me thinking of the because you have a fish and he's in water. David Foster Wallace did his water joke, right?
Yeah,
The fish parable about the two young fish are in there and the older's like, "Hey guys, how's the water today?" And the other fish, the two new fish go, What's this water thing, right?"
yeah,
So I
yeah.
think that's kind of as people that live with invisible disabilities, we live in our own environment, right? And
Hmm.
and we're used to it, but other people don't necessarily understand it, you know?
Hmm.
And so I guess the question's really around how do we create environments where you don't have to disclose everything about yourself just to get some grace, but we're really trying to figure out how do we engage with people? When's the appropriate time to talk about it and how, right?
Hmm. Absolutely. It's about, it is about, offering some level of trust in the people that you do, that you interact with on a day-to-day basis. But we are, regardless of our invisible disability, you know, communication is a two-way street. And really it's just as important to listen to other perspectives for those who may not understand the invisible disability as it is the person who does not have the invisible disability in understanding what the person who has the invisible disability is going through. It's a communication piece. It's ability to recognize that. And, when you think about communication as a whole, um, we have that responsibility to make sure our message is being heard, just as we're given the grace to express our message.
Hmm.
Um, you know, Finn does that. Finn feels is understands the friendships. They're, Finn's friends, the dolphin and the turtle, they understand that something is wrong. And, having that grace and empathy across that avenue is really, the beautiful part about this, but it's all of our responsibilities.
Hmm. For sure. No, that's awesome. Well, so if a child identifies with Finn,
Mm-hmm.
what's your hope of what happens after they turn the last page of the book? Now what?
I think the big part is that, the child saying, yeah, okay, this is this is not unique to me. This is something that if if a fish can forget how to swim, you know, my issues of forgetting what I have to do for my day-to-day tasks, or it's in the realm of possibility, and it's just that empathy of just being able to recognize and empathize with them and saying, yeah, I can feel your struggles. I want the child to close the book and say, you know what? Yep, other people are out there that have this. And now that I know that, I can maybe offer my support, my help, to express how I deal with it, or how I compensate for that, or just to be there to listen and to know I have a friend to listen for me, to listen to me. So,
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Um, Gosh, there's so many questions that come up of how do we engage at the parent level? How do we engage at the teacher level and even classmate to classmate? You know what I mean? Like, how do we teach children to show compassion toward somebody whose behavior they just don't understand, right?
right. Well, I mean, I take it from just how I started with the process is there was empathy for my boss's boss and my CEOs and CFOs not understanding, the concepts of IT audit and governance. And, I was like, well, instead of just saying, well, they're executives, they should know about this stuff. It's like, all right, my goal is let's talk about education. Let's break down those pieces into digestible formats. Let's, have a dialogue. Be open to listen. Those types of things. That's where it comes from. And yeah, that's kind of how I see it. That's how I try to live my life. That's how I try to live, you know, my goals in educating others. It really is around, assuming the best, assuming best intent and, and, helping other people understand.
Yeah, no, that's great. If you could go back to your 10-year-old self, knowing everything that you know today, what would you tell them?
Not to build a bike ramp. Maybe not. No, I think I'd probably tell them that, there's other people out there. Because I did feel alone. I didn't understand what was going on. Why was I thinking differently? And that led to the depression. That led to those things. And albeit too, is like I said, my parents didn't understand it either. And there's like, John, why in the heck are you doing this? Why are you, I'll tell you a little anecdote. When I was in high school, I don't know how I did it, but I lost my shoes. I was at gym class. I came out, couldn't find my shoes. And I had to do the rest of the day in tennis shoes and socks. And when I came home, I had to explain that to my parents. It was like, jeepers, why, how can you lose your shoes? And, it is, it is what it is. So, you know, if I was to go back in time with that, I'd be saying, you know what, I understand. Some things are out of your control. Some things you just, let's talk about the tools to help going forward and
Yeah.
accepting that. So,
Yeah, no, that's amazing. What was there a moment where something that you considered a weakness became your strength? And how did that go?
you know, um, I think it was, what I considered a weakness originally was thinking differently. Yeah, a lot of times, coming into school and stuff like that, what I would consider to be very linear sort of thinking, A to B to C to D, where one of the advantages of ADHD is what I call kind of like that starburst mentality, being able to see the 30,000 foot, dive into the 10,000 foot, come back out and stuff like that. At the time as a kid, it was, well, why aren't you thinking about this way? And then having others not recognize, like, well, I can't think in a linear manner. I can't think, why aren't you progressing from A to B to C? The strength came, or the value of it came in sort of decisions, at work, and being able to tackle, uh, the, urgent situations in IT. The server's down. Okay, well, let's look at the full perspective. Or in auditing, well, I can take a look at, from an infrastructure perspective, I can look at a process perspective, being able to see those things holistically, super strength. Not a lot of people can do that. And yeah, that's pretty much where I would say was the value in the learning experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I don't think people get that either of, not everybody can do the big picture to the tiniest little micro thing that needs to be dealt with and then back out, like popping in and
And
out. That's its own unique skill set that, I mean, especially in you said, IT auditing. Holy cow, man. Look at all the things that you're dealing with, right?
Yeah, you go across the board, and that's the thing. If you look at the architecture, an IT architecture, you have web interfaces, you have network interfaces, you have database interfaces. Now with the generation of AI, there's a whole new avenue of learning there. Some of my other books that I bring in, talk about that. Educating AI, and making sure that we have the ethical, background and premise to that educational process. You know, an ADHD, that's the value an ADHD mind brings to the table, is thinking of new ideas, of being able to say what ifs, where what ifs aren't really recognizable on the surface.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Well, I have to ask the question, are there Finn sequels? Is there a like where are we here in the storytelling process?
There are a lot. There are a lot of books that I've written that are waiting illustration right now. You know, regarding invisible disabilities and other topics. Part of that process is again with the internship, working with the illustrators to help see what resonates with them. Expanding the program too to help other writers get published as well, and to have a space for them to be able to write based on their on their interests too. So there are there's quite a few that I've written waiting for illustrations, but and I can't say that Finn's going away. He's a cool dude, and I'm really grateful for what he's brought to me to date, and I'm pretty sure you'll see him again.
That's awesome. Well, we never know who's watching or listening to the podcast. And maybe it's an adult, maybe it's a child, maybe they read your book, maybe they didn't, but they probably will after this. Um, who they might feel different or misunderstood, and maybe they're failing at being normal. What would you say directly to that person?
To me, there's no such thing as normal. There really isn't. It's you know, realize that you have creative talents. As a parent, realize that your child's creative talents may not be tapped or may not be easily seen. Doesn't mean that those talents aren't there. Um, you know, it, it's about creating the space. It's about keeping it simple and distilling information into biteable chunks. Um, you know, you can, as a child, you can teach your parents some pretty cool things. It isn't just your parents teaching you. So it's a partnership, and I hope you have those resources and you have the courage to do that. Um, there are resources out here like the Invisible Disabilities Association to help you with that process. Um, yeah, you are loved and you are cared for, and darn it, you're pretty awesome being you. So,
Yeah. Well, that's a great statement.
yeah.
How do people find your book?
The best way is to, it is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. You can also visit my site, my website, carlojlavare.com. Carlo is I do literary fiction as well. That's my pen name on the literary fiction side. You can learn more about the internships as well. My ask is if this is something that you're a part of a school or you think you have an interest in doing as a part of your education, or you're a parent saying, yeah, this might be a good outlet for your child, please reach out. I'm learning this process as I go along. I'm just deeply grateful for organizations like the IDA and for institutions like the University of Colorado to realize the potential of this dream. And yeah, and if you guys want to chat, you want to learn more about me, reach out. I'm always here for you. So.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I appreciate the time today. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you wanted to share?
I think the big thing is really around the values associated with this, visibility, empathy, equity, education through storytelling. Um, those are really powerful things. And a lot of times in the day-to-day activities that we do and how we get stuck in the thinking or getting through the day, work and stuff like that. These principles go a long way. And, it's important to value those and, tell your own story. think up your own Finn, see where Finn touches you, and yeah, and don't be afraid to share it. So.
That's awesome. Well, I like to ask one last question that we ask everybody, and that's on your darkest days when they may not be going so easily, what is it that gets you through it?
Um, writing, journaling, giving my wife a hug, you know, those things. I have a really great support structure in my family, my daughter, my wife, my parents, my friends, you know, thinking that they're there, and being there for me. How lucky can a guy be? So, yeah, there are days where it's pretty dark, but you know, I also realize that I can reach out to those people and ask for a hug or ask, you know, just listen to me rant for a little bit. That goes a long way.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Great advice. Thanks so much. Well,
Hmm.
thank you too for being with me today and sharing your story, and
Thank
especially
you.
for Finn the Forgetful Fish. What an awesome story, and look forward to seeing what other adventures will go on in the future here. So,
Thank
yeah,
you.
thanks so
Thank
much.
you. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I've been talking with John Cusimano, the author of Finn the Forgetful Fish, and with just, amazing conversation about storytelling and how it actually helps us understand people living with disabilities and invisible disabilities, especially. So if you're looking for more information, you can find it at invisibledisabilities.org. You can also find John's book here at this website, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us on the Invisible Encourage podcast.